Hi, everyone. My name is Lonnie Bloom. I'm an audit partner here at Witham, where we provide audit, tax, and advisory services. I'm a member of our technology practice and co-lead our e-commerce sector. Very excited to be here with Brian Anderson, the CEO of Nacelle. So for today's conversation, we'll take a deep dive into e-commerce market and enablement technology, specifically headless and composable commerce. We'll talk through some of the headwinds facing e-com today. So I'll pass it to Brian for a quick intro. Brian, can you tell us a little bit about what Nacelle does and who your customers are?
Yeah, sure. So, on a high level, Nacelle builds and sells software that boosts e-commerce revenue. We are what's called headless technology, which is a bit of a new trend in the e-commerce world. And it's an interesting space because, even what people think are the most sort of modern e-commerce solutions, like Shopify, for example, it was actually built 20 years ago, Shopify, right? And I think people don't really realize that. So if you think about the world 20 years ago, people weren't necessarily walking around with their BlackBerry buying a mattress or a pair of Jordans, right? It was just a very different world. And so what Nacelle does is it bridges the gap between the modern world and modern technology today and, the old technology that most merchants are working on today. So high level, that's our mission here at Nacelle.
Great. Yeah, that's super interesting. I think when I think of from a consumer perspective, I think of e-commerce and it's just buying stuff and, getting it delivered to my doorstep. And you don't realize the technology that goes behind an e-commerce business actually, making that happen. So it's super, super interesting.
Yeah. And it's not just, it's not just a static website, right? Obviously the idea of adding to your cart, checking out, finding product, getting content in, filter, search, all these things. It is quite a complex application when you really think about it.
Absolutely. So Brian, what are some of the major headwinds going against e-coms in today's market? I could think of a few that maybe we're talking about. When I think of personalization, I think of that it's just getting harder and harder for e-coms and companies to personalize because this constraint with data and privacy protection. Cookies are getting harder to track. There's cookie apocalypse happening. What is your take on that? What can e-coms do to get ahead of this?
Yeah, just to take a small step back to the macro picture. Actually, my opinion, the economy is doing really well, right? It's chugging along. It's not, I think there's generally a labor shortage, not a labor excess. So, things seem to be moving well. However, I think with, the concerns around inflation, the concerns around, interest rates going up over time, these are macro factors that do affect several decisions that commerce executives make every day. It's certainly not lost to anyone that the buying power of the consumer is one of the most important stats that an e-commerce company that's selling direct to consumer really cares about. So I think the industry as a whole is not blind nor immune to such cycles. And my personal take on that is I'm hopeful. I think the Fed might have orchestrated a perfect landing for us, right? And the soft landing that everyone's been doubting. But certainly we'll see. Time will tell. So I think a lot of executives are a little hesitant to make a move on a big project right now, just given the uncertainty around the future strength of the consumer really for next year. So that's certainly a macro trend that's affecting us. You're absolutely right. The personalization side, the idea of being able to grow really quickly by selling very targeted, personalized ads on a platform like Meta has always been sort of the go-to strategy for fast-growing e-commerce companies for more than a decade, kind of thing. Part of the reason why those campaigns were so successful was because the tools that they were using were so darn good at targeting that maybe they were a little too good, is what the world said. And when new policies came out on the iOS devices that really restricted that, it radically changed how the equation works, and how the growth model and growth cycles work for e-commerce companies. I think actually, as a whole, in the industry, we did a really bad job of anticipating this. Like, we knew this was coming. I don't think people fully understood what the ramifications were of that. So I think you kind of have that double whammy. I'll throw in, I think during the COVID pandemic period, there was tremendous growth. Obviously, people are, shopping at home. I think the other thing the industry got wrong is we kind of thought it was just a structural change, that things would just be that way. But I think it's very much rebounded into the trajectory we were at formerly. So, as a whole of commerce, e-commerce does continue to take share. And, right now it hovers between, 17 to 19% of total purchases. So, we thought maybe that would go up a lot faster after the pandemic, but it didn't really hold. So you have a triple effect here with these factors coming in, and it does create a lot of headwinds, for our customers, for, the merchants and the executives that I talk to. These three things are very much on their mind. And it brings up this conversation of, well, what can we do to counter this? How do we hit our numbers, this year and next year? And increasingly, even, sort of non-technical teams like marketing teams, not technical in the sense, they're not engineers, but they're looking toward technology to solve some of these problems. I think they're recognizing that, okay, we can't do nothing. We have to try to, combat this as best we can. And the focus has really shifted to conversion rate, average order value, and what are the things a merchant can do? What's the low-hanging fruit to kind of combat that without changing too much in terms of your overall strategy or your brand or anything like that. Those are, slow-moving, big changes. But, to change the technology that's powering, the front end of your website, the back end of your website, with the way Nacelle operates, that's a very quick change. And so, the conversations with commerce executives has really been around, hey, here are these headwinds, what can we do to counter such things? So.
Yeah, it's great. And, it leads me to sort of next question about rising marketing costs in general and low conversion rates, right? Companies are spending a lot of money on marketing to get consumers to the site, but having low conversion rates. How do businesses navigate this challenge? How do they make those clicks? And I get on a website all the time, and I'm leaving and not filling a cart, maybe walking away from it.
One thing that I've learned as an engineer, you sort of intuitively understand that the faster things load, the better it is, whatever better is. But when I talk to CDOs, CMOs, it's that gap isn't that inverse correlation hasn't been fully established yet in the market. Meaning, I don't think executives have on top of mind that if I increase the performance, the load speed goes down for my website, that I will get better conversions. But it's empirically true. Not only do we have a plethora of data at Nacelle that shows when our merchants adopt our technology, they don't change anything, right? But their conversion rates on average are going up 28, 29%. And that is, I think, really a jaw dropper to a lot of folks on the marketing department. But the frustrating thing, I think, for marketing teams after they start, after they get up and running on Nacelle, it's, oh gosh, we've been doing all this work and we haven't been optimizing it, right? And for all this money that we pour into our ad spend, and all the time we take to produce ads and to get the branding right and to get the voice right, we were just leaving all this money on the table the whole time. And really, the big secret, or one of what I think are the big secrets, the big three secrets, for sure, one is page load speed. And if you think about the modern consumer, they do care about that. They're using apps that are really fast in comparison. You think about Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X. I mean, these are, for the amount of data those systems process, these are really fast, snappy, responsive apps. And so, in my opinion, it gets your brain sort of used to what responsive is and what fast is. And the minute you don't get that, your dopamine levels start going down, right? It all of a sudden becomes frustrating. And that frustration is what increases bounce rates, which prevents you from getting good conversions. But also, once someone's shopping, they're more likely to abandon the experience if things load really slow. It's just been proven over and over. And so, yes, if you want a great conversion rate and you want a great shopping experience for your customers, page load speed should really be one thing that's top of your list, because you don't have to change much and you can get that benefit.
Yeah, it's a good point. We've gone a long way from 10, 20 years ago, from the dial-up days when you would take 5 minutes to just get on the internet, which is crazy to think about now that you have consumers that spend 5, 8 seconds, and it's too long, right? It's too long to get there
Yeah,
to a
five
website.
seconds is 5 seconds, and you're definitely losing conversion. Getting below 2.5 seconds is really the gold standard, and that's what you try to focus on. But there are so many factors that go into page load speed. What Nacelle tries to do is offer a suite of APIs that are the fastest on the market, and that's really how we do a lot of our magic. And of course, you don't have to rip out the platforms that you have today. It actually has a data ingestion engine that you can pair with whatever technology you have in place. But yeah, the fast page load speed is really a big one. Since you brought up personalization too, I think it's high on everyone's list. This is the one that I don't think you have to prove to merchandisers that this is important or valuable. I think kind of marketing teams intuitively know, if you segment your market and you speak to those different segments directly, you're going to get much better results if you do that. The problem is, the technology that generally does that today hurts your page load speed even more. Actually, they're one of the worst offenders. And so the big question is, okay, for all that work that you've done to segment and personalize, have you any gains that you're getting on the conversion side, have you offset that now with a slower page load speed? That's one problem.
Right.
The second problem is, I don't think merchandisers, they're small teams. They do a lot of work, and it's hard enough just to get the default experience right and the default content right. How now do you scale that out to get into many segments, right? How do I build landing pages and actually whole shopping experiences for many segments? And it's just sort of an impossible task for merchandisers at their size to really do. So, there's a lot of consideration that goes into that. And I think it is, though, the other pillar of really getting great high conversion rates.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Adding more technology is always good, but sometimes it then backfires if it's going to mean your page is loading, a lot slower than
right. You have to be very aware of the technology that you add. And I think this is where things start to get frustrating for a lot of business people. They're like, well, can't we just have these things and pair them together? Doesn't that just work? And, as your website grows in sort of footprint, digital footprint, I'll call it, it also gets more complex. And those complexities are where things really start to, if they're not managed well, they'll start to fall apart very quickly.